The second chapter of the epic tells the story of the journey made by Enkidu and Gilgamesh to the great cedar forest to kill the menacing giant Humbaba. As with the Greeks, the Mesopotamians had a deep sense of fate. That is, that the gods have determined that certain things will happen and there's no changing this. The chapter begins with the statement that Enlil, the father of the gods, quote, had decreed the destiny of Gilgamesh, end quote. According to this decree, Gilgamesh will enjoy power as a great king during his life, but he will not be immortal, even though he is part divine. This statement of Gilgamesh's fate foreshadows chapter 4, where Gilgamesh, saddened by the lot of finite human beings, goes in search of immortality. But despite his best efforts, he cannot escape his fate. There's an existential lament about the meaninglessness of existence in the face of death, which has affinities with the book of Ecclesiastes. Gilgamesh says, quote, "For us men, our days are numbered. Our occupations are a breath of wind." In Ecclesiastes, the vanity of all human activity is frequently compared to chasing the wind. Gilgamesh further laments, quote, "I have looked over the wall, and I see bodies floating on the river, and that will also be my lot." This somewhat nihilistic worldview is presented as his motivation for wanting to accomplish something great and for setting out on the expedition to the cedar forest. Gilgamesh wants to perform some outstanding feat so that he will gain a great reputation. It seems that being well known and leaving behind a good memory of oneself is the best that one can do given one's mortality. So the expedition to the cedar forest can also be seen as a response to the problem of death and mortality. Death can, in a sense, be overcome with enduring fame won from great exploits. On the face of it, Gilgamesh is a hero who will accomplish great things, but in fact his agency is limited in important ways. Like the Greek heroes, Gilgamesh can't accomplish anything on his own without divine assistance. As a human being, he's too weak. He has only limited subjective freedom. So in order to ensure the success of his undertaking, he makes sacrifices to the sun god, Shamash, and asks for his assistance. Shamash agrees to help and appoints the winds to assist Gilgamesh. And indeed, they come to his aid in the critical moment of the battle with Humbaba. Along these same lines, once he arrives at the forest with Enkidu, Gilgamesh invokes the help of the gods of the mountain, offering them sacrifices as well. These gods grant him and Enkidu prophetic dreams. In addition, Gilgamesh is aided by his own personal guardian spirit, Lulubanda. Thus, the world of Gilgamesh is interwoven with a world of gods, and it's the gods who have true freedom and agency. One might think that all of this divine assistance would undermine his status as a hero, since he can accomplish virtually nothing on his own. However, from the perspective of the ancient world, this was not the case. Everyone, even the greatest of heroes, were limited in their agency. Their freedom was subject to many forces greater than themselves. In particular, the world itself, nature, limited human activity. The sun, the winds, the mountains are natural entities which must be enlisted into the service of Gilgamesh before he can do anything. Alone with only human forces, he's nothing against the forces of nature. This is a radically different perspective from the one we have today, where we generally have a much greater sense of our own agency and possibilities. The giant Humbaba is the guardian of the cedar forest. He represents nature. He's not a human being or someone cultivated by social life. He's a giant, a monster who lives on his own in the wild. He has no human father or mother, but is a child of the mountain. He's portrayed as a frightening creature, and all of his notable characteristics are described with similes involving animals or objects of nature. Quote, "His teeth are dragon's fangs. His countenance is like a lion. His charge is the rushing of the flood." End quote. He represents the untamed natural forces, quote, "like a raging wild bull." His raison d'etre is to protect nature, that is, the cedar forest. So when Gilgamesh cuts down the first cedar tree with his newly forged axe, it's an attack on nature by the human spirit or civilization. There's a historical hint in the story of the expedition to the forest that sheds some light on the nature of Humbaba. The area around Uruk was poor in natural resources such as metal and timber. The historical record shows that ancient kings from the area, such as Sargon of Agade and Gudea of Lagash, made expeditions to obtain cedar for their building projects. The forests were, however, inhabited by people who were loath to see foreigners come in and cut down their trees. These expeditions were thus accompanied by violent conflicts with the locals. These forest people had their own traditions and religions, and it's thought that Humbaba was one of their gods, specifically their local protector deity. It was natural to think that he was leading them in any battle against any intruders. Thus, when the writer says that Enkidu and Gilgamesh came to the cedar forest and fought with Humbaba, this is in fact a shorthand way of simply saying that an army from Uruk came and fought with the local forest people. In other words, Humbaba is simply a literary way of representing a group of people. Somewhat oddly, before the struggle even really gets underway, Humbaba capitulates. He begs Gilgamesh to let him go and offers to serve him as one of his subjects. He even offers to give Gilgamesh all the cedar trees, the ostensible point of contention. Although Gilgamesh is moved by pity and disposed to accept Humbaba's surrender, Enkidu is suspicious. And with his urging, Gilgamesh strikes Humbaba with his axe, and together they finish off the giant. After this, the spoils of the forest lay open for Gilgamesh and Enkidu to take. The chapter began with the god Enlil proclaiming the fate of Gilgamesh, and now at the end by returning to Enlil. The god is outraged at the killing of Humbaba, who was begging for mercy. This angering of the gods can be understood as the cause for the negative events that take place in the next chapter.